Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, in the continuing saga of Bruce Lee, it's amazing that this guy continues to have so much attention attracted to him. Even these many, many years, I mean, we're talking almost 50 years here. And certainly impressed people internationally. And I think he impressed a lot of people who didn't have heroes of their same cultural and racial background. So, while it's amusing how a lot of how do we put this, non-whites fight each other all the time, the Mexicans, the blacks, everybody seems to find Bruce Lee as their hero, and rightfully so, particularly in the 70s when there was a lot of people that were now coming up in life in general. They really didn't have any heroes. This kind of kick-ass kind of guy who fought for the underdog in cheesy kind of junky movies impressed everybody. He certainly was a consummate actor. He knew exactly how to enthrall the crowds. He was trained by his father and spent years in the movie industry as a child, and then took this information and was very smart. Bruce Lee wanted to become a megastar. He was not really interested in much of anything else. How do you become a megastar? Well, you don't do that from your bad accent and your poor acting skills in general. Well, you have to have something else to offer. So he was smart enough to take what is commonly done in China, particularly Asia and Hong Kong, to take this information and that he could use now that made him special. Which the only thing that really makes him special, particularly at that time, was the fact of martial arts, which were just kind of coming on the scene. A lot of it came into contact with GIs that were stationed in Asia, particularly Japan, after World War II. People seem to forget that. So there was this great blending after World War II into the 60s in particular, with Vietnam and other things, of bringing martial arts to the United States. So he was very smart and was able to do all that. And of course, he had many, many problems. The Chinese horribly were racist against him. They thought that he wasn't Chinese because he has a bit of European Dutch blood in him, and persecuted him horribly. Told him he couldn't do things, but they never accepted him anyway. So that's the story there. But let's get into the facts. He did not in any way, as people want to give him credit for, was the first person to combine mixed martial arts. Now, he did do this. Him and almost every martial artist that I've researched, everybody has put this together. Was he the first? Did he have any influence? Well, I don't know if he did. His system, of course, incorporated some of this that he put together later. But so did Chuck Norris's. So did everybody else who was a martial artist and wrote books and put systems together. Every martial artist who wants to be great knows that their system is basically faulty. It's inferior. It has great weaknesses. And Lee, of course, knew that. And Wing Chun, that he studied and was his primary from the IP man, who got it from a woman, and it was a woman's martial arts, because it was about fighting bigger people, etc., which is a good idea because, especially if you're Asian, you're going to be going against people who are much physically bigger. So it's pretty good to do that. And in life in general, most of the punks and hoodlums out there are big dudes. That's why they are in those areas. And this is notoriously that we see people who are bodyguards, working for criminals, as they are all big people. That's what they do. They don't have to be educated. They just have to be big. So it's a good system to get into, but it is interesting that the Wing Chun that he learned from IP Man was invented by a woman. Just kind of interesting. Because it's rare, you don't think of women in martial arts, etc. But the combination are mixed martial arts, while he brought it into a certain popularity, but you got to remember that he really wasn't popular until after his death. His films, basically, martial arts films, were not big. He got a few breaks. Nobody cared. The Green Hornet was a failure. Nobody wanted to see martial arts. It just was not something that was cared about in the late 60s and 70s. Kung Fu became a hit only because of its philosophical combination. I don't think anybody really cared about the fighting. That was kind of added sauce to the top of your meat, so to speak. So nobody really cared about that ad. That became much later, and as we have even to this day, plain and simple, nobody cares about martial arts in the public. Now, the public follows it a lot. Apparently, I guess teachers are busy. People like it. Everybody wants to be able to handle themselves and fight. So there's always an interest, but there's no support of it. There are no TV shows. There are no movies. No movies. 8 billion people. There are no martial arts movies of any importance. Nobody goes to them. The only guy making these movies today is Damme, who makes a movie or two a year with the fantastic budget of anywhere from $4 to $6 million. That just about pays for the catering bill. So this is the reality of martial arts. And then apparently martial artists, other than their slavishly knee-bending worship of Bruce Lee, don't follow anybody else, no matter who they are. Nobody is making any movies to any great extent. And if they are, they're cheapy, low-budget things. So the whole idea is that this is the reality out there. But when we get to mixed martial arts, every single martial arts, and I've researched this recently yet again, all have trained with other ones. Now, there is a great master. I'm going to be making an entire video on him, who was the first one that I can track, but I'm sure everyone else. You know, the gossip in this area about mixed martial arts, I'm going to try and keep this brief. And people in interviews have stated this, and very true, because you must remember that while everybody is blamed for racism, everybody is racist. And people have labeled, quote, white people racist, which of course they are, and particularly to their own people. I mean, the British to this day are murdering white Christians, just like they are called the Irish, that they murder to this day and have teams of military people executing them. Well, that's pretty racist, and they ain't exactly looking like Leroy. So, the bottom line is that this is the kind of stuff that goes on. And, of course, some of those are actually white people, non-Aryans, who are actually white people, because everything is blamed on the Nazis, who were not white. They were Aryan, which is a Arabic place they came from, otherwise known as Iran. Not white people, and you'll never find anything in National Socialistic literature that says white power. That's them goofball retards in America. Yeah, I'm screwing my sister, and I hate all these other people. You know, it's unbelievable, the kind of stuff. But that goes into racism in general. But the point is, the Asians are very racist. The Japanese, who found their brotherhood with the Arab Nazis, are extremely racist to this day, and they don't want foreigners in their country. They won't let people in, and they have a worker shortage, and is their general nature. Now, it's a very dictatorial, obnoxious society, Japan, that gets away with all that. Oh, they make cute cars, little radios. So, but if you look into Japanese society, they are, and the reason why they work so well with the Nazis is they're pretty much identical. So the whole idea, and of course they claim that, and the Japanese hate all the other people and have butchered hundreds of millions of people in Asia for over 1,000 years. So everybody is racist. The Chinese hate others, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's inferior, everybody's blah. So this is a unfortunately normal reality that everyone goes through. But Bruce Lee suffered horribly by the racism from his own Chinese people, who beat him up in school because he had a little bit of a Dutch Jew in him. And this has been lied again. It's went around for years stating that they were some sort of German, but nobody wanted to say you were Dutch because they didn't even know what you are. And secondly, because of his Jewish ancestry, the Chinese, being the racists they are as well, didn't want to mention that. So interestingly, that was it, and that was a rich person in his family, apparently, as he came from a wealthy family as well. So the fact that he invented mixed martial arts is not true whatsoever. Now, since he was rejected by everybody, he decided that he didn't have to follow customs. In the Oriental tradition, you don't teach outsiders, particularly Western white people, martial arts. Now, this is true in any secrets. You don't give it to other people, and you don't give it to other cultures. So this was the rule. Now, he broke that, but they were beating him up anyway. They were harassing him when he came to America. That they told him not to teach black people. Again, shows you how racist they are. Very typical of the Chinese. And, of course, you don't teach whitey. Plain and simple. So, and I understand all this from a social viewpoint to a degree, but those days are gone. But secrets are kept, and are kept to this day. If you think everything is open to everybody, you're crazy. And if you go and train anywhere in the world with an Asian teacher, he's not going to teach you anything completely if you are not of his racial background. That's a fact. That's the way it goes. Now, you dumb Americans go out and give everything to I want to be loved all over the world. I want to die for you. You know, this is what the idiot Americans do when you can't get a job in the American embassy or on an American military base anywhere in the world. Well, you're going to die for them. So this is the kind of stupid things that Americans think, especially as of now. But, you know, there's a lot of things in America that are kept. You're not going to get secrets in so many areas, and period. They're kept within little groups and may not be as racially based, but they are based in their cliques, their cabals. So the point is that's what exactly happened. Now, he decided to break the mold there because he never got any support anyway. He was harassed and everything else. And and he was and probably rightfully so, he was a very obnoxious, pushy person because he had to defend himself in Hong Kong against a lot of people after him, including the triads and everything else that went after him and I believe were directly involved in his death, even though it also comes up. And I'm not sure that it necessarily kills you. But the point is that he was a heavy drug taker for a period of time, at least it appears during the time that he died. But you know, people, there's an awful lot of cocaine addicts out there, and it was everywhere in the 80s, and people were taking it by the handfuls. I hate to tell you, people, they're all still alive today. So why a very physically fit person would necessarily die from that, I don't know. I think that was a weakness, and I think that the triads who ultimately killed him knew that and probably got him bad stuff or did what other things. There's still a lot of things here that are unclear. He was having health problems for the first time in his life and did even return to America to see doctors. So the whole idea is that you have to wonder what's going on there. But it's a complicated issue. And I don't think it's as straightforward as that he was a drug addict. I think he was a drug user. But was he an addict? I don't know. I think he was too egotistical to be an addict. Did this contribute to his death? Yes. Was it the cause of his death? I frankly doubt that. He was working for the opposition movie studio there, the biggest studio that was 100% controlled by the triads. He wasn't working for. He was their competition. It was costing them money. So to cover that, but let's get into mixed martial arts again. Every person is done. Now, you can say that he did it first. Well, I'm not sure. I've just uncovered evidence here from Sho Kasugi? I always have a problem remembering his name. Sho Kasugi, the famous ninja guy who came to the United States in 1969, learned every possible martial arts he could. And, you know, I've heard this from everybody. Joe Louis did this. He learned every martial arts he could in the 60s prior to meeting Bruce Lee. And was able to go through them very quickly and took all what he wanted out of them and stopped doing this because he didn't really find that there was that much difference. And he was probably, I believe he was the greatest fighter of all time. Big, nasty Southern guy who learned all this stuff and was a Marine who learned how to kill to begin with. Bruce Lee learned how to cha-cha. So the whole idea is that that's the reality there. So he's probably the best fighter out there, certainly in the top 2 or 3. And he won championships in full contact karate championships, which he put into, he invented or designed or put into action full contact karate, which before that, people like Chuck Norris and other people were involved in points. And he thought points were kind of stupid and, you know, kind of baby. I want to hit people. I'm a Southerner. So the whole idea is that he put that in. He won all these championships in that and proved himself as a big heavyweight. They two couldn't even fight against each other because there are weight classes. Why are there weight classes? Well, let's wake up, people, because there's a big difference in weight when you're fighting. Oh, no, there isn't. It's all about speed. Size doesn't matter. Yes, person who's never been in a fight in their life. You can think that. And you can also think the moon is made of green cheese. So the whole idea is these are the things that actually happen. So he was not the first one. It appears the person doing this and who incorporated in their teachings and lifestyle was Kasugi. Sho Kasugi was the one who did that first. He was the one that had schools teaching it. He is alive today at 75 and completely and totally unappreciated. I'm going to talk about him in another particularly video here very soon. He's 100% neglected while people follow this very questionable guy who really looked great but was a mess. Sho is alive today. He was even married for 30 or 40 years, a recent divorce, unfortunately. I mean, frankly, Bruce Lee on every level was kind of a mess. Certainly, he was a very talented technician martial artist, as Chuck Norris has stated as well, and certainly looked fantastic, even though I think if we really want to get down to who looked the coolest, I don't think anybody, regardless of whether these are fighting movements or not, can you really argue with Van Damme with all his splits and his other stuff didn't look fantastic. This guy was not only did he study ballet, he was a bodybuilder, everything that went into it. Regardless of whether you like him, you think his martial arts are good. If we're looking at Hollywood image, I think he was number one. And of course, Lee came in second there with all of his. But a lot of that was very the over-the-top Hong Kong nonsense. And I never really watched his movies. I watched all the other martial arts movies, particularly in the 80s, the ninja movies, the Chuck Norris movies, which are very big and on video. I never really watched his. I found them to be very cartoonish. And I think we could say his whole life is kind of cartoonish. But he's a guy that had lots and lots of problems. He was a drug addict. He was whoring around every place. He was not very intellectually at a high level. He was a C student. And what did he study in the United States? Philosophy. So nothing that he got. What he studied in Chinese was punching and kicking. That's what he in China. That's what he studied in Hong Kong. He wasn't at the temples. He wasn't studying Taoism. And you'll never even hear him reference that other than in his little goofball philosophy books trying to make himself Mr. Kung Fu in real life. That was all a facade. And certainly it didn't do it. When it really came down to it, if you read about him, he read a lot of Western books on success and positive thinking. He didn't really relate to all that mystical Asian, to a large extent, I consider nonsense. Even though there's good from everything, and certainly Zen and other things is interesting, but I don't think it's really suited to the Western mind. And I think Bruce Lee was more Western-minded than anything else. So as we understand mixed martial arts, yes, he practices, yet he talked about it, mostly because he wanted to be the best fighter he could, and all of the other traditions had these major weaknesses, and it was shown to him. Wrestlers took him down and choked him out instantly. This kind of mind screwed him, and of course he figured, well, I better learn some grappling. So he added that in there, and this is true. And all of these traditions did that. Now, did the traditions, particularly at that time, well, isn't that what everybody says? They all said that you can't train in other traditions. They're inferior. You stay with your own tradition. You're not supposed to learn Kwai-Tong-Do if you're a jiu-jitsu person. So apparently, and I'm not sure how much of this went on or not, but apparently that was the story. Yeah, that's also business. Don't learn the competition. Stay here with me and pay me to train you. So, I mean, there are business aspects here. Could somebody, if you sat down with them, justify that position, that theirs is so much better? This just can't really. And I'm sure that while people are competent in their systems to a degree, well, why wouldn't you learn anything? Why would you just, like anything in life that I talk about, why would you eat just one food? Or I'm Asian, so I'm going to only eat noodles. I'm Italian, so I only eat spaghetti. What kind of an imbecile does that? Of course, there are imbeciles that do that. So this was the thing for business reasons, I would say 90% of it. Then there was your your typical racism ego that your system is the best. After all, if it wasn't the best, why would you be teaching it? So you learned it, you think it's the best, and your teacher said you the same thing. Now, supposedly, for respect for your sensei, your teacher, that you would have to get a note stating from them that he allowed you to learn jujitsu. Okay? If he was in Taekwondo or something. Apparently, and I don't know about any of this stuff, but I guess that's what you would do if you wanted to respect your teacher. But the bottom line is, did anybody bother to tell another teacher if they wanted to learn something? Yeah, I'm learning your stuff and the, Dan's stuff down the road. Do you really do that? So I'm not sure you would do that or not. You would just go train there. Now, if you wanted to be a little straightforward and maybe show a little more respect, and I'm not sure it's your teacher's business where you train, period. What is he doing for you? You're paying him a service. This is not a club. This is not your religion. This is not something you necessarily have to ask permission for. Of course, I've always been a free thinker. Other people are knee benders and just, please, master, can I learn how to not poop on myself? This class over here. No, we poop on ourselves in this class. Go! So, I mean, this is the kind of, I call it Marine Corps military thinking you see from these bad movies and so forth, of how they train people, beat them half to death, all the stuff that goes with that. Of course, some of that did actually go on, particularly in the Zen schools of peace and violence. You big screw-up, I beat you. So the whole idea is that these kind of things are. So mixed martial arts is not his creation. The person who did this first and who brought it and didn't want to go around and knee bend to everybody asking if they could learn these systems was Sho Kosugi, plain and simple. And he did this, and it's written about and by him and everything else. And when he first came to the United States and started living here, by the way, completely and totally, and got educated here in 1969. And this is documented, and unfortunately, nobody talks to this guy anymore. He was also not really greedy like Bruce. He didn't want to become the superstar and knew his limitations, showing his wisdom in general, while Lee wanted to go out and be this big-time movie star in an environment that nobody cared. Not only didn't they care about his skills, martial arts, but there was a general in Hollywood, as there is even today, well, mostly white people, or what people consider white people, are there. There's hardly any Asians on TV still, or anybody else. I don't quite understand all this, but that's the way it is. And to think that in 1970 you were going to be able to break all that because you could move and look cool, nobody cared. A matter of fact, there's a great prejudice against martial arts in general, and always has been, and I remember this in the 70s. Big guys, boxers, guys that used to hit you with baseball bats or use their gangs to attack you, used to laugh at martial arts. The other thing, anybody who's ever been in the public and says that they know martial arts, the first thing everybody wants to do is attack you. There's some sort of innate thing that you're saying you're such a great fighter, well, I'm going to test you right here and now. Seems to me that's kind of stupid. But the point is, nobody gave martial arts any credit. The big, bulky guys that were 200, 220, 250 pounded everybody's head into the ground on their physical abilities. And certainly, the martial arts teachers, and I've met a lot of them, couldn't handle any of that. They don't know how, because fighting is about who's the biggest, nastier guy, not how fast you are. All that is nonsense. You have to really practice for that. And standing in your little gi pajamas, dancing around doing katas, is about as close to real fighting as dancing. The cha-cha. Until next time.